Hello, I'm Pika, and welcome back. Splatoon 3 introduced us to all sorts of new features, but funnily enough, one of the most complex additions has been something we've known about since the first day the game was revealed. Stringers are basically the poster child of this game, but what exactly even are they? Well, they're a new weapon class of course, but how do they work, and should you be playing them? Before getting too deep, let's go over the basic mechanics of the class to be sure we're on the same page. The first thing anyone will notice when playing Stringers, or at least the two that we have as of now, is that they shoot 3 projectiles each time you fire with them, and the range, damage, and spread of these shots vary depending on how much you charge your shot. The orientation of the shots also changes depending on how the user is standing. When on the ground, you'll shoot horizontally, with the 2 outside arrows landing to the left and right of where you're aiming. And when you jump, this instead becomes a vertical spread. At full charge, you can take out enemies from far away in one shot, but only if you land all 3 arrows on them. Though that is super satisfying to do, it might make you wonder why anyone would want to choose this class over weapons like chargers, which also have good range and accuracy but are far more consistent. Now if all these weapons could do is shoot at full charge, I'd probably agree with that. But the charge mechanic for this class opens up a lot of unique possibilities that makes these weapons shine. Let's go over how these charges work to see what I mean. The charge function on Stringers is most comparable to Splatlings, surprisingly, since just like them, Stringers also have 2 separate charge rings they have to go through before having a fully charged shot. And these 2 rings aren't just for show either. Both charge rings have distinct effects on how your shots work if you release them part way. The first charge ring fills up quicker than the second one for both Stringers, and it only increases the damage that you deal. If you release your shot right as your first ring fills, you'll have the exact same range and spread as if you just tapped the ZR button, but your damage per arrow will increase from its default 30 damage to either 35 on TriStringer or 45 on Reflux. Only on TriStringer, completing your first charge ring also activates the unique exploding arrows, which get stuck on whatever surface they hit and burst after a short moment, dealing 28 damage each to anyone close to them. During your second charge ring is when both the range of your shots increases and the arrow spread narrows, hitting their peaks when the charge completes. There's a lot to be said about how you can utilize different stages of these charges, but I'd like to simplify it first by laying out a few definitions. Let's break down these stages into 3 major levels. The first I'll refer to as tap shots, those being shots that you fire by simply tapping the fire button and letting go without charging at all. Second will be half charges, meaning when you charge up to the completion of the first ring and then release your shot. And finally would be full charges, which are when you charge all the way through both rings and fire at maximum strength. Here's the point where I want to split this discussion between the 2 Stringers that we have currently, since there's some considerable differences between how both of them want to utilize these charges. I'll start with the TriStringer and work our way up the charge levels, meaning tap shots are first. Tap shots are the fastest option you have available to you, and because of their large spread, they're by far the quickest way for Stringer to put turf down. The large spread and low damage also makes it unreliable for fighting opponents who aren't super close to you. But with that said, anyone who does get too close can get shredded surprisingly quickly, since you can take out enemies with just 2 taps if you land at least 2 of the arrows per burst. This is only really viable when opponents are right in front of your face, so you can think of tap shots almost like a shotgun. This is also the highest DPS you can get from TriStringer, so if you find yourself right in front of the Rainmaker shield or some other object with no opportunity to run away, going to town with tap shots is likely your best bet. Again though, using tap shots in tight situations is mostly a bonus. The main utility here is the very respectable turf output you get with these even at mid-range. Next are half charges, and this might sound weird, but these are actually what I think TriStringer players need to be using the most often. You see, while these shots lack both the speed of tap shots and the range and precision of full charges, they let you output your exploding arrows at the quickest rate and also at a large spread, and this is an incredible thing. If you ask players what the greatest weakness of long-range weapons like chargers are, most of them would rightfully say that they can be avoided by hiding behind cover, and can also be easily overwhelmed if you can close the distance on them. Using frequent half charges is how TriStringer avoids both of these issues. The lingering exploding arrows are perfect for setting a line in front of yourself that enemies can't easily run through, since they'll be dealing with both the paint and the damage from the explosions. If you repeatedly fire half charges, you can layer these volleys on top of each other too, leaving essentially no gaps for the enemies to break through. Combine this with your Toxic Mist, and you can lock down any approach options enemies might have as long as you can reach it. Not only that, but because Stringer's shots arc downwards, and since bursts cover a large area, especially when they're still spread apart, you can quickly flush enemies out from behind any cover they might be playing behind, and force them into the open where they're easy shots for you and the rest of your team. Overall, spamming half charges keeps yourself safe and keeps your enemies moving. Last is full charges. There's not as much to say here since their use is pretty straightforward. Maximizing your range and making your shots as accurate as possible gives you the best tool available to you to take out enemies at long ranges. Anytime you really just need to wipe someone off the stage quickly, this is the best kind of shot for you to use. Just be careful not to focus too hard on these, since a long charge time and limited spread means you really can't paint that much while using a lot of these full charges. In my experience, you're usually best off using tap shots and half charges to secure the area around you, then throwing in some full charge shots to find a few kills or make enemies run away. Then move forward with your team, use more tap shots and half charges, and rinse and repeat. Now I want to talk about Reflux, and I promise I'll make this one quicker. First are tap shots. Much like TriStringer, these will be your best option for quickly painting the ground due to the wide spread and fire rate, which is even faster than TriStringer. These shots also land a lot closer to yourself, so they're easier to get the hang of and let you swim around in the paint you lay down basically immediately. Half charges on Reflux are interesting, since unlike TriStringer, there's no explosion functionality here. Since you don't gain extra paint or range compared to tap shots either, you're still better off using tap shots to just paint and move around. However, since the first charge ring of Reflux is so fast and the damage per arrow spikes from 30 to 45, half charges are actually the best way to dish out quick DPS with Reflux. Additionally, being able to quickly hit 2 arrows on enemies up close for 90 damage is enough to finish off any opponent who's been damaged even a tiny bit. When something in front of you needs to disappear quickly, go for half charges on Reflux. Last once again are full charges. Just like with TriStringer, you're mainly looking to use these when you really need max range or if you have a good shot lined up already. Reflux can also store its full charges temporarily like chargers can, which is nice, but honestly this isn't all that useful outside of going for nasty trick shots, purely because your charge speed is just so fast anyway, so it doesn't really save much time. Plus, any time spent holding a charge is time that you aren't spending using your absurd tap shots to paint the entire map. Moving on now, I alluded to some points here already, but I want to brush over potential ways to use your kit to perform at your best with these weapons. TriStringer comes with Toxic Mist and Killer Whale 5.1. Like I said before, Toxic Mist combos incredibly well with TriStringer's half charge shots, since the enemy's reduced movement within the mist makes passing through the exploding shots even more frustrating than they already are. Whale 5.1 combos well with the weapon's ability to keep opponents moving and make no form of cover feel safe. Between arcing shots over walls, poking around corners with the explosions, and locating and pushing enemies around with the lasers in 5.1, a persistent TriStringer will make sure none of their opponents have any fun. Also, using your special when you're low on ink gives you an instant ink refill, so if you get in the habit of timing it right, you could be even more persistent with your output. Reflux comes with Curling Bomb and Tenna Missiles, a familiar kit to any Bamboozler players from Splatoon 2. Curling Bomb gives you a quick way to move around and avoid getting cornered, which goes a long way when you know the opponent wants you and your Tenna Missiles gone. Also, charging up a Curling Bomb and throwing it out in front of you when you know someone is about to rush you isn't a bad idea, since them either touching the Curling Bomb itself or getting hit by the outside of the explosion brings them into the range for 2 half-charge arrows to wipe them out. And with missiles, well, yeah, they're good. To wrap things up, this video promised some tricks, so let's blast through some quick tips and quirks about stringers that you can use if you really want to get serious about playing them. Since stringers don't lose damage as their shots start falling, and since they fall in a long and consistent arc, you can actually increase your range by aiming a bit above the horizon. This is great for catching someone off guard at long range, though keep in mind this might make you shoot over someone who's close to you that you would have otherwise hit, so do this thoughtfully. If you need help deciding when to use horizontal shots or vertical shots, pay attention to what your opponent is currently doing. You see, player hitboxes actually change depending on what form they're in. Kid form is tall and narrow, while squid form is lower to the ground but wider. This matches up perfectly with the different arrow spreads you can use too. If they're standing still firing their weapon in kid form, you should be able to jump and line up a vertical one-shot, even from pretty far away. If they're in squid form, laying low to the ground and moving around a lot though, you're usually better off with the standing horizontal spread. Standing fire is the best option to default to, since even though you might not land quite as many one-shots with it, the spread makes dealing some kind of damage to your opponents more reliable even when they're moving. Plus, it also maximizes your paint output and makes it easier to trap opponents in your ink and stall them while you ready your next shot to finish them off anyway. These next 2 tips both try to work around the wide spread that tap and half-charge shots have. For one, if you're trying to tap shot someone who's right up in your face, if you aim directly at them, you might notice that both of your outside arrows fall to their sides pretty frequently. It might sound silly, but you might actually be better off with worse aim in these situations. See, if you aim your lead shot at the side of your target, it's more likely that the outside arrow on their other side will also hit. For both TriStringer and Reflux, this cuts your time to kill with tap shots in half. Keep in mind that this is only good in this particular situation. If you're shooting at someone far away, or if you're using full charges at all, aiming directly will always be better. This next one is pretty niche, but it has its moments. Since the distance and damage of Stringer shots is consistent, if you position yourself just right, you can get all 3 of your arrows from a vertical tap shot to rain down on one spot, dealing 90 damage instantly. Spacing is everything with this one, since it only works at the end of your range, but this is another trick to keep up your sleeve if you find yourself needing to clutch up quickly with a few taps. Finally, I want to bring up something that isn't particular to stringers, but it's a useful trick that stringers, especially TriStringer, get a lot of value from. Those of you who saw my blah blubber guide from Splatoon 2 probably remember this one. For those who don't know, enemies who have taken damage temporarily appear on your map. As a weapon class that's great at both dealing chip damage and at shooting over walls, you'll not only have a lot of situations where you'll partially hit an enemy and be able to see them like this, but you'll also be able to line up shots over walls if you see them trying to take cover on your map and finish them off just when they thought they were safe. I know we bounced around a lot between different stats and ideas, but I hope this goes to show just how much there is to this weapon class. To come back around to the original question, should you play stringers? In my opinion, yes, yes, yes. While stringers may be a bit difficult to get the hang of at first, the fact that they're so flexible and technical means that anyone who does manage to master them will be equipped to handle essentially any situation or matchup. We already have hybrid weapons in this game, like ballpoint splatling, squeezer, and flingzer roller, that function like 2 weapons in one, and I'd argue that stringers are more or less the same, if not even 3 weapons in one. Between all the different firing modes we talked about, stringers having decent potential in up-close engagements, some of the best paint output and spacing control in the entire game, solid lethal pressure at long range, overall consistency, and TriStringer also having mid-range chip damage elements with its explosives almost like a rapid blaster, there really isn't much this weapon class can't do. Not to mention that the 2 stringers we have right now have strong and relatively easy to use global specials that they pair well with. The flexibility and high skill ceiling this weapon class has makes it feel so rewarding to learn too. So I really hope this guide inspires some of you to give these weapons a try yourself if you haven't yet. Anyway, that's all from me, so thank you all for watching. If you like this, consider subscribing, as I love making guides like these and will surely have more to come. See y'all next time, and have a good one.